I'd like for you to, as we start this morning, if you have one of these with you, go ahead and take it out. iPhones, anybody? Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. All right. I want you to take it. On most phones, I only know the iPhone, but there's a button on here that actually shuts it off. Are you familiar with that? I want you to do that. I want you actually to take the button and hold it down. On the iPhone, you have to hold it, and then you'll swipe this thing, and bam, the thing is actually inactive. Are you doing it? Are you with me here? Now, I'm not doing this like a judgment, like don't bring your phones to church. I know that you guys bring your phones to church, and you use them to look up the Bible passages that I'm citing. Maybe you hear something you want to remember, and you put it in your notes so you don't forget. You're not like looking at the news updates or checking the scores of a game or checking your social media feeds, Instagram. You're not like checking the weather app to see if it's still raining outside. You're not doing any, I know, so I'm not judging or anything like that. I actually just wanted you to experience the panic of shutting it off. So if you must, you can turn it back on now. My first two computers were gifted to me by my father-in-law, who was a computer geek before there was such a thing as computer geeks, or at least that we didn't know of them yet. He built the first computer that I got and gave it to me, and then when it was old-fashioned and out of date, then he gave me the second computer, and he had actually built it. And I was getting his old stuff, so it was old stuff, right? And he always kind of gave it to me apologetically about how it was, sorry it was so slow and not up to current standards, but it was his hand-me-down, so that's what I got. And I was like, it didn't compute. Slow? Like, I was used to the long stroke typewriters, and all I was really doing was word processing. So this was mind-blowingly fast. And he's like, this is so slow. I remember back in 1999, 2000, I heard a guy named Leonard Sweet speak. He was kind of a church futurist. He was able to kind of look at the culture and see where things are and look forward into the future and see where things were going. And I remember him saying that, and he said in a few years that everybody is going to have a computer in their hand that's more powerful than the one that NASA used to put man on the moon. And I was like, yeah, right. And here we sit today. I have my iPhone 6. It's actually vintage, right? I looked at it's considered a vintage phone. And yet it tells me everything that I need to know in the whole world. And it's actually still kind of, in my book, it still seems pretty fast. We have the world at our fingertips. And with it, the woes of the world delivered to our hands in almost real time. And when I say the world, I mean what's happening in Ukraine and China and North Korea and Iran and Ohio and Florida and Texas. Something happens of significance, and we all have the capacity, the ability to know about it, to hear about it, to know what's going on. In addition to that, all the trauma and drama of everyone that we've known since kindergarten in the palm of our hands. And the negative effects of technology at this point are actually very well documented. I mean, there's countless studies that tell us about how our technology is increasing people's experience of isolation and loneliness. What we thought was going to connect us is actually isolating us. That it's decreasing people's happiness and overall satisfaction with life. They have studied that people, the more you use your phone, the less content, the less satisfied you are with the life that you live. I'm not making this stuff up. You can look it up. Increasing anxiety and depression. It's negatively affecting our sleep, either because we're checking it all the time or we have notifications going off, or just the blue light has a negative effect on our rest. Faster and vaster. Faster and vaster. Do you know that we were made to live at 3 miles per hour? That's our natural walking pace, somewhere between 2.5 and 4 miles per hour. But the average, made to live at 3 miles per hour. And our devices bring us content at 300 millibytes per second. I'm not suggesting that we limit our lives to how fast or how far we can walk. Just want to note that there's a price to pay, that there are consequences of what we're doing. All those things that I've talked about. There was a book written a couple years ago called The Shallows, what the internet is doing to our brains. One of the most profound things, it's increasing distraction and decreasing our focus and attention. It's shrinking our capacity to focus and to think about anything for a significant period of time. And by significant, I mean like more than a couple minutes. And all the things that matter most in our lives require focus and attention, right? Right? If you're in a relationship with someone and you can't focus, you can't listen, you can't hear them say things that matter to you and to them. If you're trying to solve a problem at work and you can't focus your attention for more than just a couple minutes, give yourself fully to it. Psalm chapter 1. It says, "Blessed are those whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night." Blessed are those who can focus their attention on God's design, God's rule, God's purpose, God's place for their life. It will fulfill them if we meditate on it. But we can't keep our attention fixed on anything. Life at the speed of the internet is mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally wearying and taxing on our bodies and on our souls. And it's just one of the aspects of modern life. And technology is just one piece of it. I remember seeing this commercial. It was a bunch of years ago, and it was actually an old commercial when I saw it. But it was when they were first introducing things like washers and washers. That Hoosier just every once in a while slips out. Washers and dryers. And they were talking about how these new devices were going to be they're going to save us so much time, and we were going to have free time that we didn't even know what to do with anymore because we could do our laundry so fast. We had microwave ovens. We could cook our food so fast. And it actually didn't give us free time. It just gave us to do more stuff and to cram more and more and more stuff into our lives. We can travel not at 3 miles per hour. We can travel 500 miles per hour and wake up on the other side of the world. That can happen. I've actually taken a very long flight. And it's really cool, but there's a price to pay. Right? You get there after you've traveled 500 miles per hour for 18 hours, and you're in 7 time zones away, and your body kind of completely recalculate its time clock, and they say it takes like a day per hour of time change to reacclimate. Like all these things make life faster and vaster. I wonder if Jesus looks at our lives and doesn't think the same thing that he did when he looked at the lives of the people as he was walking through the towns and villages in Jerusalem. And Jesus actually only one time in his life ever took any form of transportation besides walking. And he walked through the villages and the towns, and he saw the crowds. It says he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Do you sometimes feel like you are harassed and helpless? Like it's just so much stuff coming at us that it's hard to get our bearings straight, to keep everything under control. What time does your day start? Anybody? What time does your day start? 6? 5? Online, you can put it in the chat box. Let us know. What time does your day? Somebody else? 5, 6, 7? Anybody else have something other than that? 11? Right? When God set the clock for creation, it says, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. And then after the first day, there was evening and there was morning the second day. And the third day, there was evening and there was morning. And there was the fourth day, and there was evening and there was morning, and the fifth and the sixth. That when God set the clock on creation, the day started in the evening. And then after a night's rest, you got up and you participated in God's creation, doing the things that he created us to do. And at the end of your day, you went to rest and started the next day. That the design was that we would not fall into the bed after a hard day's work and get a good night's sleep as a reward for what we have done. But first would come rest. First would come rest, and out of a place of restfulness, of restoration, we would get up then and participate in God's creation. That we were resting up for what was to come, not crashing from what had just happened. That when God finished his first week, the first week of history and creation, his first week of evening and morning, 6 days he labored. On the seventh day, he rested from all of his work. And then, even beyond that, as he was giving directions to his people on how to live in the world, he actually said, and now after 6 years of farming and harvesting, taking care of your fields, on the seventh year, rest the land. Don't use it. We know now that if you plant in the same fields year after year after year after year after year, that the soil loses its nutrients and becomes less productive. That rest in the days and the weeks and the years is actually woven into the fabric of creation. It's the way it was made. And in Genesis chapter 3 and 4, we're introduced to a world that doesn't rest, to a world that's lost its rhythm. Through painful toil, you will eat of the ground for all the days of your life. Every day. It's going to be hard now. Genesis chapter 4. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Instead of resting up now, restlessness is the order of the day. When God brought Israel out of bondage in Egypt, 400 years, he led them out into the wilderness to Mount Sinai, brought Moses up to the top of the mountain, and he gave them the 10 Commandments. And in the 10 Commandments, the way they're structured, the first 3 commandments are about how we relate to God. Don't have any other gods before you. Don't make any idols, any graven images. Don't use God's name in vain. And then the last 6 of the 10 Commandments are about how we relate to other people. Honor your father and your mother. Don't commit murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't covet. And so you have the first 3 about how we relate to God, and the last 6 about how we relate to the world. And then you have number 4. Number 4 reads like this: 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. He's giving them directions now about how to live in the world. And this word Sabbath means cease. He's actually in our lives, we've gone from resting up to restlessness, and he's inserting a rest stop. Cease. Stop. On the 7th day, stop. I'm setting this day as a day apart for you. And Israel, God's people, as they started to practice this in their lives, and they've got the first 3 are about God, and the last 6 are about how we relate to other people, they added number 4 to the first 3. This is about God. We need to do this in obedience to God. And if we don't do it, then we are not doing what God says that we're supposed to do, and we're failing God. And so they created all these stipulations and guidelines about what you could do and what you couldn't do on the Sabbath. Because if you did this, then you were breaking the law. And if you did this, then you were keeping the law, and all the boundaries and parameters. And when Jesus enters the scene and he starts his ministry and he starts walking around, Jesus loved to pick on this particular commandment. 5 times in his ministry, he did something on the Sabbath, on the 7th day, just to push the religious leaders' buttons. Just to, he's actually going to make a point. He's saying, you guys, you've got this all wrong, this Sabbath thing. You think it's about you doing something for God. And he says the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. God gave this commandment to you for you, for your life. When Moses led the Israelites, now they've gone into the wilderness, they've been out there for 40 years, and it's time for them to go in the promised land. He recites the 10 Commandments to them again, and he comes to number 4, and he says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. He's saying, now we're going into the promised land. He gave you this fourth commandment, and then we went into bondage in Egypt for 400 years, and now we're going out. And he took you out of bondage. Remember that. And now he's saying, hey, now you're not slaves anymore. You can take a day off. You can have a break. If you're feeling run down and ragged and working 7 days a week and have your nose to the grindstone and you're harassed and helpless, Moses says, hey guys, you're not slaves anymore. You don't have to do this. God saved you. Take a break. I didn't say it. God said it in his word through Moses. Take a break. King Solomon, when he replaced his father David on the throne, undertook a massive development project. Rebuilding buildings. He built the temple and houses and palaces and parks and reservoirs, and creating this massive community during Israel's heyday in the city of Jerusalem and in their country. And after he'd been building and building and building and building and doing all this and getting it all done, one day he realized that he hated his job. He'd been working day and night, doing all this, and he woke up and he realized that he hated his job. You can find this in Ecclesiastes. And then he wrote this song. He says, unless the Lord builds the house, he's been building all these houses, right? Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, this huge, massive city that we've created, that we've built here, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat. In vain, you're working your backsides off, toiling for food to eat. The bread of anxious toil is the way another translation translates this passage, this anxious, the toiling day and night. The bread of anxious toil. It comes in a lot of flavors, this bread of anxious toil. Many of us take our work home. A lot of us work at home now, right? The place where we eat is the same place we have our computers, that we spend our days doing our business. I don't necessarily stay up that late at night. And I don't get up that early in the morning by a lot of peaceable standards. But I can gnaw on any number of problems for hours in the middle of the night, eating the bread of anxious toil. Many flavors. Swiping up, swiping down, swiping left, swiping right. Liking and posting and watching and waiting to see if people will like what we've posted. Binge watching stories about friends, but not having quite the oomph that we need to actually go outside of our door and spend time with friends, make some friends, have some friends. Conquering enemies and saving worlds that don't exist. Conquering enemies, saving worlds that don't exist, while the world that we live in is passing us by. During the Exodus, Israel was tired and thirsty as they're walking through the wilderness, and they grumbled. And because of their grumbling, it resulted in an extra 40 years in the wilderness. And Hebrews assesses it this way. It says they were not able to enter God's rest because of their unbelief. It was their unbelief that kept them from experiencing God's rest. Solomon says it this way, "In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat. For the Lord grants sleep to those he loves." Now, when I first started reading this passage, the Lord grants sleep to those he loves, I thought, dang, God must not love me because I am not sleeping very much sometimes. It's actually not what it says. Solomon, actually, what he's saying is, your anxious toil is in vain because you are loved. You're wasting all of this time in worry and stress and anxiety because God loves you. He sees you. He knows you. It's because of Israel's unbelief that they couldn't experience God's rest, because they did not trust that God loved them, that they could not rest in his provision for them. Not every sleepless night is a lack of faith, but some are. Some are. And Jesus, remember last week, Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd." The good shepherd knows his sheep, and he speaks to them, and he leads them out, and they know his voice, and they follow him. The good shepherd comes to the rescue. This is one of Jesus' invitations after he saw these people who are harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. If you're there today, hear these words from the Message translation. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take it a real rest. Walk with me. Work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Come to me, you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I am the good shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. This blows me away. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He's providing more for me. What is the first thing that the Lord shepherding us provides? He makes me lie down in green pastures. The first thing he does is say, stop. Lay down, rest, take a break. I got this. Everything's going to be all right. The first thing, the Lord is mine. He makes me lie down. I was reminded as I'm thinking about this, professional sports teams, their teams actually have hours that they have to go to bed. Curfews that are enforced before games. Why? Because they play better when they have their rest. Now, why do grown men and women need to be told to go to bed so that you have a good day tomorrow? And yet somehow they do. And the crazy thing is they actually submit to it. They agree to it. They follow the rules, or they don't. And if they don't and they get caught, then they get fined for it and they have to pay the fines. Or they get suspended from their teams and they have to pay for that. Do you perform better when you're well rested? When I'm tired, I can tell you I'm more irritable. I'm less patient. I'm less focused, more easily distracted, more susceptible to mindlessly flicking through 150, 175, 200 reels, or grabbing an extra handful of M&Ms. You play that over and over, day after day, week after week, compounding, affecting our health, our relationships, our focus, our attention. Stop. He makes me lie down. Not just anywhere, in green pastures. In green pastures. Now, if you're a sheep, then a green pasture is your place where you get your sustenance. The thing that you need to live again, to walk again. He makes us lie down in green pastures. Where do you go? Where do you go when you are tired and weary and worn out? I think the default for most of us is just give me a break. I just want some relief. And we go to things that typically bring us distraction. I don't want to have to think about it anymore. Or escape. Just take me away from it all. Let me watch somebody else's life and watch them make mistakes and figure out problems, and I'll just kind of live vicariously through what they're doing. Or self-medication. The thing about all those things that we go to relief is that when the relief is experienced, nothing's actually changed. Not just in the problems that we're trying to figure out or solve. Our souls, our spirits haven't been given anything new that helps us then to go out and live differently again. The question is not, where can I find relief? But where can I find restoration? Where can I find green pastures? Where can I go and find something that after I've been there, I walk away and I actually have something new inside of me again, something fresh again, something living again, something that's going to help me in this world again. So I've challenged you. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. That was I challenged last week, your assignment to memorize it. I'm sure you all did, right? You could do it right. I just know it. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. The second thing, I'm asking you to memorize it again this week. He makes me lie down in green pastures. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Say it with me now, right? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Memorize it. Meditate on it. Meditate means think deeply about it. That's like, I'm thinking, you're used to like this, and that may like be 60 seconds, or maybe if you're like really high, maybe a minute or 2 minutes. To meditate, what does it mean? God, are you shepherding? Show me how you're shepherding me. Lead me, God, not just to a place of relief, but where can I go for restoration? Show me the path that leads to life. Meditate on it, which actually may lead you to do something absolutely crazy like this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down. He makes me lie down. I'm going to stop for a minute in this space and allow God to restore me. Lord, I pray that as we learn more about your shepherding and discover more about our sheeping, and how the ways that the world pushes us and pulls us, shapes us and forms us, is not always in alignment with our design. And we find a way and we get by. But it's disruptive. And it comes at a price. Help us to see you, to hear your voice, to know it, to recognize it. Deepen our faith, to believe that because you love us, we do not have to eat the bread of anxious toil. I pray in Jesus' name.